All right, guys, welcome back to Anchor House Below Deck number 15. We have the privilege to have Jon Collins on the podcast here, who is one of the founders of Bible Project, right?
Yeah.
And I guess before we get into what that all looks like, do you mind if I pray over this podcast?
Let's do it.
Cool. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time, Lord, another podcast here with the speakers that we get to just enjoy and pick their brains and get wisdom from every week, Lord. I just am so thankful for these opportunities that we as a media team get and just the team that's behind this whole podcast, Lord. And I just pray that the conversation we have here glorifies you and that it just flows nice. And in your son's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Cool. So Bible Project is a super big YouTube channel, right? But if you guys don't know about it, the best way I can explain it, and I've watched it when I'm doing a 1 year read through the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I read one book, after that I'll watch the Bible Project.
Are you doing it on the Bible app?
I'm not. I'm just doing it in my
just do your own
Bible.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
cool.
own thing.
Sweet.
But it helps me put it all together, and it's kind of like a well talked out story of that Bible book, the book of the Bible, and then there's animations to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like brings it to life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super cool because, it's very like theologically sound as well, right? So it's like, it kind of brings it all together
Mm-hmm.
for me at least, and it's super good to get back together. So I guess right away, how did you get started in just animating things, right? How did that all grow?
Well, yeah, because I actually went to college to study Bible and theology. And then in my early 20s was even a pastor for a year, and quickly discovered that I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I knew what I was talking about in terms of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel old enough to be pastoring people. I was like in my mid 20s. And that was just me.
Yeah.
And I felt permission from God to not have to worry about that. And so I stepped down from my position in the church, and a mentor of mine asked me what I was going to do. And I was like, I really had no idea. But I was really inspired by some of these short films I had seen recently that were kind of more educational in nature. And I love to understand things, and I love to explain things that I understand. And what I saw was that you could do this kind of journalistic thing with media, and it can be really impactful. And so I told my mentor that I would love to do that. And so I think I essentially told him I want to make documentaries.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I knew how to or had any background. I was like, no, but I'd love to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hired me on the spot to make a video for one of his ministries.
Yeah.
He's like, cool, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And so I bought a camera. No, he bought a camera. I bought a computer and Final Cut Pro, and we just started working on it. And then I just was off to the races, making videos. My skill really was in the editing of videos and crafting the story and explaining things through the editorial process. And then more and more I began to rely on using illustration and animation. And then this was around the time where explainer videos were coming on the scene. So this was like 2007, 2008. And it became like this new product where if you could explain a piece of software or a company or an idea with animation in a couple of minutes, like that, like everyone wanted that.
Yeah.
And I knew how to make them, and I was making them well. And so I was able to make a whole company around making these short animated explainers.
And then that led into
and then eventually I kind of got bored of making like cloud computing explainer videos.
Yeah, so it was all like, it wasn't really biblical based. It was all like for companies. And then now you're leading into.
Yeah, I got Google as a client, and then it really blew up. And
wow.
So built a pretty big studio, and we were just a lot of tech companies. A lot of here's how our software works and why you should buy it. And so that was successful. It gave me, and having a successful business gave me some margin to then think about, well, what do I really want to do with this skill? And of course, I went to school to study the Bible, and I really wanted to understand the Bible, but I just felt like I didn't I didn't know how to do it. Like,
Yeah.
I went to school, I studied in undergrad, I grew up in the church. I felt like I knew the answers, but I didn't understand the Bible. And it was confusing. Every time I'd go to read the Bible with these answers in my head, I would just find all this stuff that confused me. And eventually I just decided, I guess I don't know how to read the Bible. And but then a friend of mine, Tim, who I started a Bible project with, he's a special kind of guy who he's nerdy, and he went and got his PhD in biblical studies and Semitic languages. Yeah. But he's just so down to earth and doesn't have this sense of, I think a lot of people who study the Bible professionally begin to have this sense of like, I don't want people to get it wrong, so I need to correct people really quick, and I need to tell them exactly what to believe. And whenever I would talk with Tim, and I'd be like, Tim, here's my questions, he wouldn't quickly be like, no, that's a bad question, or that's the wrong thing, and let me give you the right answer. He would come to me and be like, oh man, that's such an interesting question. Have you also thought about this? Here's another question. He would like deepen the question. He would make the question like more problematic. If I came to him and I was like, man, I'm struggling with what to think about hell or something, he'd be like, yeah, that's really interesting. And have you thought about this? And have you thought about this? And like, we just get it all on the table. And then it was this permission just to be honest. And then the other thing that he did that was really special was then he helped me see that the Bible was asking different types of questions than I was asking generally. And the questions the Bible was asking and inviting me to ask were in the end actually more interesting questions. And so we just started reading the Bible together, and I quickly was just like, Tim, we need to start making videos, animated videos. That's what I do. And he thought it was a great idea. He's a very visual person. He loves to draw stick figures and little simple cartoons, and he thinks visually. And so immediately we just started working on how would we make explainer videos that look at the Bible, do biblical theology, and look at the themes and structure of the Bible, how it works as literature.
Dang. Yeah. So how long, because whenever I watched it, I'm like, I wonder how long it took them to first like do the whole Bible, like animate it. So how long did it take you guys to animate the whole Bible?
So we have those videos that are just overviews, and they're like, you have like a poster, and it shows you the shape of the whole book, and then the video is like someone kind of drawing in the poster as Tim explains it. Yeah. And I think we've made all of those in about 2 years. Oh, sick. It was an effort. Yeah. It was like a lot of work, and the reason we did it so fast was, do you know a guy named Francis Chan? He saw what we were making. We were making videos that weren't those overview videos. We were making a different style of video, and he liked them, and he thought this is really helpful. He had at that point, and I'm sure he still has something similar, like a house church movement that he was training pastors up into, like lay pastors. And these pastors don't have the opportunity to go to seminary. And he's like, these videos are really helpful, like shortcut to kind of the seminary education that he felt like he got. Yeah. And so he asked us how long it would take to finish the Bible. And the type of video we were making at that time and the pace, it was going to take us like 10 years. And he asked if we could do it in a year. Dang. And so that's when we came up with the style of the overview, kind of simpler. And him and his church, well, his home church network and then another church in the Bay Area wanted to make, and I think it was like 2018 or something, or 2017, make it the year of the Bible and read through the Bible with those videos that you've been using to read through the Bible. So we were like on a clock, and they were starting it that January, and we had to basically get the videos done in time for when their church was at that book in the reading plan. Oh my so we were kind of just hustling to do that, and yeah.
Dang, that is crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So then, like when you guys are making the videos, like, what's the process of first, like, what does the process look like when you are like thinking about like how to animate it or like how to make your point come across? like, do you guys sit down with a team for a while, or like, I guess what's the process of making those videos? And if, like, not just like the post board, like books of the Bible, but also like, I mean, in class this week you showed us some like super cool ones of Genesis, and then some like wisdom literature videos. Like what is the process of that, making that video?
Yeah, the first step is Tim and I talk through the content, and we'll do it for hours. Like, what if it's a book of the Bible or a theme? It's generally it's themes, and he'll come with his notes, and we'll just sit down and we record it actually on mic, and that's our podcast.
Yeah.
And so just as long as it takes, we'll just work through the content, and I'll just ask him questions, and I'll try to understand it. And that's my role as an explainer, is I just want to understand it, so then I can help someone else understand it.
Yep.
We've done that, and we've worked through all the content. Then we start writing the script. And sometimes I write first draft. Often I write the first draft. Tim will rewrite it. I'll rewrite it. Now we have a scholar team. Yeah. And so the scholar team actually is now in the process. So now, before Tim brings his notes, he actually hashes out a bunch of content with the scholars, and then they work through a bunch of passages and stuff, and then he brings me all of that work, and then explains it to me. Yeah. So I love my job because I don't have to do any of the work. I just get to ask the questions and try to make it make sense.
Figure out how you're gonna like portray whatever day.
Yeah, like how did I finally kind of understand it? What clicked for me, and how would then I represent that in a video? And even with the video, though, I'm just like, I'll write the script with Tim, and then we hand it to our artists. And we have an animation studio, and we'll give it to them, and then they'll ask us questions. They'll read it, they'll ask questions, they'll give us feedback. Oftentimes we'll rewrite the script. They'll start to give visual ideas and storyboard it, which sometimes even causes us to rethink the script a little bit and rewrite it. So it's a very kind of give and take with the artists. Until we get to a stage where we've got a script we like, we've got storyboards we like, we've got a visual style we like, and then it's like, cool, go. Yeah. And then they make the video. Yeah.
Yeah, and then kind of like with I guess it's not really with the script, but I guess when you came to here to teach, so Jon came here this week to teach about Sermon on the Mount, and then you brought in a packet of the sermon. Oh yeah. And it was the Bible Project's interpretation of it, right?
Yeah, our translation.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it because like there was different words that like I never saw when I read through. I read through the NIV and the NLT right now, and like you would translate like heaven. Instead of heaven, it'd be skies. Yeah. And I guess my question to that is, like, I feel like there's so many words, like when you're reading the Hebrew and the Greek, like there's so many different words you could use for that translation. So like, I guess kind of two questions. One is like it's important, like I guess how important is it to get like the right interpretation? Because there's so many, like how do you know which one's like the closest to that? And then also like what's how does the Bible Project kind of view like that version of that translation, and like how does it help, I guess, you guys in like the production of like what you guys do, like the videos and stuff?
So for Sermon on the Mount, this was the first time we made a translation. Okay. So this is new. Yeah. Typically, when we were doing overviews of a whole book, for example, we didn't translate the book. Or when we do theme videos, we're working through a lot of different passages, and Tim will have his kind of unofficial translations in his notes. Yeah. That he'll reference, and sometimes we'll read on the podcast, but they're very fluid. They're very much like him just kind of on the spot, kind of like, here's how I would render it. And he, over the years, has had his own kind of style of ways that he liked to translate things. Yeah. For example, he always translates heaven or the heavens. It's plural in Hebrew and in Greek, heavens, shemayim, as the skies. because literally it is the skies. That's the word they use. And what Tim, I think, especially loves about that is it just makes you stop and go, yeah, what do I mean by heaven? And it kind of gives you a blank canvas to kind of reapproach the idea of heaven.
Yeah.
And then an opportunity to maybe onboard a more ancient Jewish cosmology of how the cosmos is ordered. Sorry, those big words, meaning just like the way that an ancient thinker would view what it means to live on the land and what it means for God to be up in the skies. It's not necessarily the way that we as modern thinkers think of heaven. The way they thought the earth was shaped and the way they thought, everything worked. It's good to give yourself an opportunity to step into the way they thought about the world.
Yeah.
And so our translations often facilitate that, facilitate you being kind of a tourist to a new way of thinking about the world. In terms of like translations in general, our philosophy is that you should read as many translations as you dare.
Yeah.
And so have like your favorite. I mean, that's just normal. And it's the one you're most used to and you reference the most. Excuse me. But consult a lot of different ones. Translations are like golf clubs is how we talk about it, where a good golfer will bring all their different golf clubs because there's different ones are for different purposes. And so for translations, you have some translations that are very wooden literal, and they try to stick to what the original languages are doing, which oftentimes make it sound kind of funky, like, or in English. And then there's other translations that smooth that out and try to help you understand more of the meaning behind it. Although when they do that, they have to be a little bit more interpretive. Some translations do have an agenda that they kind of want to smooth certain things out or make things sound a certain way. And they'll do it in good faith. Yeah. But like they do have that. And so when you're looking at multiple translations and then you see big discrepancies. So in Sermon on the Mount, when we saw that some translations said, store up your treasure in heaven where moth and rust cannot destroy. And then another translation will say where moth and worm cannot destroy. And then another translation says where moth and vermin will not. So what word is it? Is it rust? Is it vermin? Is it worm? And so that will clue you in. There's something going on. And then there are lots of tools that a layperson can use. Blue Letter Bible is a great one where you can like go in and then you can find the Greek word or the Hebrew word and it'll tell you where else that Hebrew word is used and the common ways it's translated. And so you can do your kind of investigation too. Yeah. So a new translation is just another golf club in there to kind of let you survey and think about it from another perspective.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We have a pastor here. Our worship pastor, his name is Jon Collins, and he's been walking us through Genesis so far. And I think the biggest takeaway I've had is like not really the Genesis story because that's like something I kind of already knew, right? Because I grew up in just a Christian household, and I kind of knew that. But like one thing is like with the the Hebrew language is that it's way deeper than I feel like than it's always translated. Like there's like a lot of foreshadowing. I mean, I guess you can read that when you're reading the translations, but also like there's some words that have a way deeper meaning. And like for the people that were reading it, like when Moses was actually like writing it, like the storytelling is like, I think so much deeper. And like it's like poetry and the art behind it is so cool. And like, I just love it when people like start like they enjoy nerding out on it because then I'm like, okay, like, well, one, it makes it easy on me because I don't have to really do the work.
That's how I feel too.
But then I'm like, oh, let's do it because then I get to listen and like hear and like maybe not like change my mind, but like get different perspectives on the Bible and the writing and like I just think it's so cool. So it's been really interesting and like I love it when people bring like Hebrew words and like what like they can be two words, but in like they can be used in different circumstances in the literature. And I guess to me it opens up my mind like I should start nerding out on it because there's so much that you can gain from it too.
Yeah, you know, for whatever reason, we can ask God one day. He gave us ancient Jewish literature as one of the main lines of connection to his wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of then requires of us, if we want to follow Jesus, to want to be nerds of ancient Jewish literature.
Yeah.
Every type of literature has its own style, its own mechanics, and, you know, some people geek out on Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Some people geek out on, like, you know, mid-century authors. Some people study ancient Egyptian mythology, and they all have their own, like, way of communicating and working. And we have ancient Second Temple Jewish literature that has been translated and retranslated, but it's got its own style and prose. It's very dense, and it's very hyper literary. Like it's very aware that it's doing literary things, so we get to be literary nerds.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to be a literary nerd to follow Jesus. I'm kind of like a 1/3 nerd. Like, I get to, like, nerd out with the nerds, but then I can just go and, like, you know, be a normal person too.
For sure.
But, like, but that's part of our legacy, and that's interesting to me, and it's something I think we all get to embrace. And one of the goals of Bible Project is we want to create 10 million Bible nerds.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of our stated, like, we'll be successful if we do that. And for us, that's someone who, you know, if, like, you asked them what's, like, your top 3 things that you love on the planet, and just geek out about, they'd be like, oh, okay, well, it's surfing. It's, like, I don't know, in Portland, it'd, like, be, like, brewing beer or coffee or something.
Yeah.
And reading ancient Jewish literature. And so it's like you only have a certain amount of time in your life to really geek out about so many things, and if it's in your top 3, then, like,
perfect.
there you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then kind of like I like that 1/3 nerd, like, you get to be that. So a lot of those videos that like the animations, so you, like you were saying, you and Tim, like, kind of do audio, like, layovers on those videos, and you're the one that
Ask the questions,
right?
Yeah.
And for that kind of, like, question that I've always been wondering, and I was thinking this week, was, like, how important is it to ask those questions? And, like, I feel like, actually, I know that a lot of the times I don't even ask questions because, well, one, I just feel like I should know it, and then when I don't know it, I'm like, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then another thing is, like, I feel like it's just kind of been, what's the word, like, maybe dissolved, or, like, I don't know what the right word is, but diluted, like the Bible almost, like the meaning of it. So it's like, I guess, like, just to talk about, like, the meaning behind asking those questions, and sometimes they can be super simple ones, but also, like, deeper ones that make you meditate and think for a couple of days or weeks.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, this is right up my alley. I mean, this is what I think about all the time. Well, there's this thing in psychology called the illusion of knowing, and it's actually it's something we all do to make us feel sane, because the world is super complex and there's so much we don't understand, and if we, like, ever have to really come to terms with how much we don't understand, we'd probably go crazy.
Yeah.
So our brain does this trick, and it tells you, like, oh no, you get it already. It's the illusion of knowing. And a great example of it is, like, you know how a bicycle works, right? Of course, you've ridden a bicycle all the time. If I asked you right now to draw a bicycle, like, you won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be like, oh yeah, where's the seat? How does that work? Like, you wouldn't do it. And it's the illusion of, I know how it works, but in reality, I actually don't. And, or I don't really to the fullest extent, or to a really meaningful extent. And I think we do this all the time, especially when it comes, not especially, but when it comes to the Bible and our faith. We're given answers, and we get familiar, overly familiar with something, and we just begin to believe, like, yeah, I get it, I know it. And if someone came and started drilling you about it, you'd be like, yeah, I actually don't really know. And you might even get upset, like, well, why are you bugging me about this? Or what I would notice, if I asked too many questions, people would be like, oh, you don't really believe, you don't really have faith. And what I've always really leaned into is whenever I have any inkling that I might not understand something, even if I like really believe I actually probably do, but that little part of me is like, but you maybe don't really get it. I lean into it. And I go, okay, there's something there. There's something fuzzy, and I want to like attack that and like try to understand it. And so my role in the organization with Tim and the Scholar team is just to like ask those questions.
Yeah.
And the thing that people tell me when I get to meet them who listen to the podcast is they thank me for that, because it's oftentimes the question they have in their mind, at least in the back of their mind, that like I pull out for us all. And there's kind of like this, it's nice. It's nice to know like, oh, okay, like I don't have to feel stupid.
Yeah.
And other people have this question, and yeah, let's dive into it. When I was doing work for tech companies, that was my job. I had to go in, I had to sit down with the person who designed the app or who founded the company or the head engineer, like really smart people. And I had to like try to understand it from them. And what I found was that my impulse was to try to pretend like I understood it more than I did.
Yeah.
Just to like save face. Because here's a smart person. I think I'm a smart person. So they would say a word I didn't understand. I'd be like, oh, okay,
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll just figure it out later.
Yeah.
And I would hold back my questions. And that was just not helpful at all, because then I'd have to go away and write a script. And I'm like, oh, I don't actually get this. So what I had to do was start going to these meetings, and I would sit down with the guy, and I would be like, or the team, and I would say right off the bat, hey, I need permission to ask you stupid questions. Like I think I'm a smart person, but I just don't know your world. And so I'm going to feel dumb, but just, is it okay? It's okay if I ask you? And they're like, of course. Yeah. Everyone loves a good question when it's in their domain, especially. And then I would also ask them permission to ask questions that might feel a little antagonistic, because sometimes like if someone's pushing back, like, I don't think I get it. Can you explain that again? Sometimes the tone starts to feel like I'm against you. It's you versus me. And so I find that especially in religion and like theology, people get a little defensive. So it's just like asking for permission to play devil's advocate, to use a term that's probably not appropriate, but like to ask questions that might feel like I'm not on your side, but I'd tell them like, hey, like my job is to help people understand your position. So when I ask these questions, don't feel like I'm against you. I'm for you.
Yeah.
So I think in general, we don't want to feel stupid. We don't want to bug people, and we have this illusion that we understand things more than normal, and so we have to fight all of those things. And it's so important to ask good questions. The Bible. Sorry, I'm talking on and on.
No, you're so yeah. That's good.
The Bible was written to confuse us on purpose.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. The Bible was written to confuse us on purpose. Like at the very beginning of the Bible is this riddle about God putting a tree in the middle of the garden that you're not supposed to eat. But it looks good, but it'll lead to death. And it's kind of confusing. And you're supposed to be confused, and you're supposed to wrestle with it. And as you read through the Bible over and over and wrestle with it, it starts to make more sense. Jesus famously taught in parables and riddles, and sometimes he'd explain them to his disciples, and sometimes he wouldn't. And the biblical narratives are constantly giving you things that are just confusing, and they want you to work for it. And the purpose is finding God's wisdom isn't in being given a simple answer. Finding God's wisdom is in this habit of communing with God and wrestling through these texts and hearing his voice. And through that, it's shaping us, shaping our imagination and shaping our character. And so asking good questions is just as important as finding the answers.
Yeah. Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Jon, thank you so much for coming here this week and just letting us, I guess, hear what you guys have to say about the Sermon on the Mount, and coming here today and letting us talk about the Bible Project and just kind of how that all worked out and how God brought you into that world. And it was so awesome.
It's been fun to be with you guys this week.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.